What's going on, guys? It's Spunkify here yet again for MMOBomb.com, and welcome back to the free-to-play podcast, episode 86. Today is September 29th, 2013, and as always, we have an excellent show for you guys this week. Most excellent. We're going to start us off with a little bit of Square Enix, bringing out the vampires with Nosgoth, SOE detailing their new Planetside 2 optimization efforts, actually going to be showing it to the players, which is a huge improvement over their, not doing anything for the last 9 months or so. Talking about SOE, we're also going to be dealing with some new updates for EverQuest 2 for free-to-play players you might be interested in checking out. And then we're kind of going to talk a little bit about how the gaming industry seems to have a case of the cold sequelitis. They're pretty much just interested in making a lot of stuff that's free-to-play off of series that are already been out for a few years. Case in point, Nosgoth there, dealing with Legacy of Kain. We have all that, though, and also the bombs of the week. We have our weekly questions, all that for you viewers. But, of course, before we get into all of this, we have to talk, we have to introduce, we have to say hello to our co-hosts. Two of them this week, the always emphatic, the awesome, the Kevin. How are you, Kevin? The Kevin.
Emphatic, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm like full of what makes me. I don't know.
I literally just picked the word out and I was like, we're gonna describe Kevin this week with emphatic. So that's the word I went with.
I'm full of energy. Yeah.
There we go. And then of course
you couldn't see it, but I did like that like jumping up in the air and stopping pose, but I didn't stop.
Oh really? Well, if you're in that one, then that makes Jason what? You're the Antichrist? I don't know. What are you?
I'm the anti-emphatic. Yeah.
You're the anti-emphatic. What does that look like? I don't even know.
Not caring.
It's the sad face.
It's the sad face. Jason Winter, of course. How are you doing this weekend, Jason?
Well, as we were talking in the pre-show, my football team won, but my fantasy football team lost. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Those of you who are interested in fantasy football should follow Jason on Twitter. That way you can just discuss with him your pre-game selections, because apparently he loves that just as much as he loves the video games, which, hey, to each his own. I'm not much of a football fan, but it's kind of funny when you get onto a video game nerd show how they kind of make fun of like sports. You're like, oh, you watch sports? You played sports? You do fantasy football sports? I don't know.
You do fantasy football? Ew, that's stupid. I'm going to go watch my League of Legends finals over here.
Yeah, World Championships in a week. It's getting close.
Getting exciting.
Yay.
Pretty awesome. I actually won't be here for the next weekly podcast because we will be down there. But to get us going, I do have a little bit of something from the viewers. We usually sometimes have a comment highlight. And remember last week, Jason, how you mentioned that there wasn't a free-to-play game that was newly announced, that was a MOBA for last week's episode. Like,
I do recall that, other than that one guy who was trying to find out how to make one on a forum somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of our users, Leon X, the comment is up on the screen right now. He says, hey, free-to-play, I did find a new MOBA this week. It's called Crystal Arena. And I actually looked it up to see what it was. And I have to say, it's less MOBA than you think. It actually was Kickstarted, and it's 2D, and you basically form your armies. And you have the armies fight against each other, but you select what's in the army when you face off against other people. And then you have your hero, which has like the whole MOBA element of having abilities and what have you. Look kind of cool. So if you guys are interested in looking at that, it's a little bit of non-traditional MOBA. Not free to play, but certainly something that indie-ish, if you're interested in indie games, you should maybe check out. If you're, for some reason, not tired of MOBAs or anything that may use that as a terminology.
I just wanted to say, looking at it and just getting a general notion of how it played, you talk about selecting your armies and you kind of have limited control over them. Also makes you think of maybe what they're going to do with that Total War MOBA thing that they're doing.
Oh, yeah, where they basically line everybody up and just say, go
this
way?
I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play, but that might be...
No one knows how it's going to play.
Exactly.
Speculation.
I am
That's
talking
great.
out of my something or other.
Here we go. It's all right, though. We talk a lot about that, or talk out of those all the time, I guess you could say. So, this week's news, why don't we start? Alright, so we have Square Enix. They're sort of starting off our week well with a little bit of news regarding Nosgoth, a human versus vampires multiplayer, sort of like Left 4 Dead a little bit, where you have a group of vampire hunters, and then you have a group of vampires, and they're out to kill each other. And for those of you who may be older school gamers, you may know that Nosgoth is a very sort of prominent area in the Legacy of Kain universe, which Legacy of Kain is a series that's been around for quite some time in various iterations, but within the same universe nonetheless. Originally, this game apparently was supposed to be something that came out in like the early 2000s, like 2003, but it was canceled and has since been revived as a solely multiplayer experience. Now, we've been talking a little bit in the pre-show about how none of us have played Legacy of Kain, so we can't approach it from the aspect of, well, you know, this isn't a new Legacy of Kain single-player experience, blah. But we can approach it from the perspective of, does this look fun to play as vampires versus humans? And I have to say, the graphics themselves are a little bit under par. It kind of makes sense. The game was from 2003 originally.
I was thinking, when you said that, that's what I thought. I was like, it looks like it came out in 2003.
Yeah, right? Like, it looks exactly like it's from that era. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it certainly doesn't look, great. But it still has a little bit of intrigue to it, I guess you could say. I like the fact that you can have different vampire types, a flying vampire, ones that leap around. And it did kind of give it that sort of Left 4 Dead feeling to it. On the flip side of that, why would any of you want to ever be humans? Like, I don't understand why you would ever... You're like, that's like when I play Left 4 Dead. I never want to be human. Nobody wants to be humans in Left 4 Dead. Everybody wants to be the hunters. They want to be the crazy, cool vampires in Left 4 Dead, the zombies and what have you. Are you guys interested in actually checking this out? Graphics aside?
I mean,
No.
it looks...
No.
No.
No, I had my fill of vampires after the horrible Twilight episode stuff of everything, and I'm over it. I don't say it's a bad game. I don't have any interest in it. Just the creative side of it, the content doesn't appeal to me. So
That's
I'll
sort
be
of-
interested. Go ahead,
Jason.
I'll finish up on him.
I was just going to say...
All right, you first.
Okay. I was just going to
everyone
say...
at the same time.
Here we go. Blah, 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 blah. I was just going to say that you kind of mentioned the medium. That's sort of an interesting thing. Like, we're sort of burned out on the whole supernatural in some respect, like zombies or vampires in this case. I kind of think it's interesting that you have these variety of vampires. That sort of intrigues me, but I don't see how the game would have any like long-term depth. Because if you think about it, if it was supposedly the multiplayer aspect of a regularly single-player experience that was canceled, generally speaking, when a game is mostly single-player and then it has an additional multiplayer component, the multiplayer is pretty bare bones. Like, there's not a ton of customization to that, unless they specifically, are gearing it towards multiplayer from the get-go. You look at games like BioShock or any other sort of story-based single-player experience. In this case, the Legacy of Kain universe and the Legacy of Kain games, the prequels, they were all mainly story adventures, So in that respect, you can't expect the multiplayer usually to have the same depth and variety as what was put into the single-player experience. So I was just going to add that to that little notion. Jason, what were you specifically saying?
I was going to say that I'd be interested in checking it out just to see if they can actually achieve something resembling a decent and enjoyable balance. Because if you watch their video, they seem to indicate that the humans have like guns and crossbows and all sorts of ranged weapons, whereas the vampires are more melee. So, and you know how that is. Yeah, if you have, normally you think, well, the guys with the guns have a great advantage, but of course, the vampires, if they can get within range, they can just obliterate the humans apparently.
Yeah.
But it's going to be tough to see if they can pull that off, and to see if, even if there is balance, there's still going to be, I guess, basically people bitching. Mm-hmm. There's going to be the belief that something is overpowered, because you're going to go up against some guy. It's like when I play Team Fortress 2. If there's a spy who's really good, he'll kill me like 7 times in a match, and I'll just rage quit. It's like I know it's balanced. I've played against bad spies, and I can destroy them. But you face that one good spy who's good at melee, basically, even though you have guns up your wazoo, and it just pisses you off so much. You're going to get that same kind of thing when there's some sneaky vampire type or whatever that can do some dash-in move and kill a human just like that. Even though, if you hit him, he's made of paper and he'll be destroyed immediately. But there's going to be a good player who's really good at that, and it's going to be at least an apparent imbalance issue, I think.
See, one thing I think that they're going to have an issue with is they want the game to be team-based, right? They want the game to sort of force players to work together to take out the vampires or to take out the humans, coordination. And that really works well in a game like Left 4 Dead because there is side objectives. In Left 4 Dead, as the survivors, you're supposed to be progressing, filling up tanks or opening up things. And so you have other things to deal with, which makes the sort of focus, while it is always in the back of your mind that there's players out there trying to kill you, you still have other things you have to give some attention. In this game, it didn't really seem like there were too many objectives I saw, at least from what they showed early. They kind of just made it to where it seemed like it was teams of vampires versus teams of humans, and they're all coordinating to survive, essentially. And that's certainly an important aspect of any game like that. But it sort of makes it difficult to use a lot of interesting tactics that maybe you can get in Left 4 Dead, like creating diversions and what have you, because of the fact that everybody's attention is always going to be focused on trying to kill the other player. Like, there's nothing to break that up. And so you talk about balance and dealing with, how do you deal with the vampires getting close and, taking you out. I honestly think the vampires will sort of complain a little bit, because if humans can just sit in one area of the map and, just focus out forward and look for where the vampires are, they could potentially get, rid of anybody before they even got close. I can only think of maybe the aerial vampire they showed in the trailer who picked someone up, and ran away with them. Something like that.
Well, there's the other one that skitters up the wall. So it's like, even if you have your back to the wall, he can come up over top of you and still come down on you. So and maybe there's another vampire that's just like invisible or something. So I could see that not being too much of an issue. You can figure out some ways around it.
Yeah. I would like to see other objectives, though, other than just try and kill,
If it's just deathmatch, then that's going to suck.
That just goes back to the whole point where I had, like, it would lack that depth, if you will. For those of you who are listening who may have been old Legacy of Kain fans, let us know your thoughts in terms of whether or not this really interests you at all, either from the gameplay perspective or just for the fact that it's in the same universe. I know I've read a lot of comments with people dealing with basically being upset that this is what they got. They waited so long for a sequel. It was teased that there would be a new game in the Legacy of Kain universe being developed. And all they got out of it in the end was this multiplayer, something that arguably doesn't look anything like the original series or play like the original series did. So that's something to consider. There's always nice to see improvements and sort of innovations in a game's sort of sequel span, but maybe not necessarily taking it in a complete different direction. And we're going to kind of come back to that thought later on in a different article. But for now, let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk a little bit about SOE, in both a good light and a somewhat good light and in a bad light, but we'll get to all of that. Beginning with SOE documenting their Planetside 2 optimization efforts. So we can finally say that we have visible proof that SOE is doing something about optimization. For the longest time, of course, people have been complaining about the lack of support for AMD components like cards, as well as CPUs for Planetside 2, like really a lack of optimization. And then also the lack of multi-core support, so you couldn't actually benefit from the fact that you had an i5 or an i7 4-core. It pretty much performed the same across the board with different CPUs regardless of core amounts. And so just general stuff like that, like the slowdowns that people were experiencing with large team fights, these are all things that their SOE was planning on tackling, and they sort of released this video series. They're up to 2 videos now. And each video, I have to admit, like, they could be saying complete and utter bullcrap in the video, and I wouldn't know. Like, they talk about in the video all these things that they're doing or going to do to reduce the input lag and change this and that and make this, more responsive. And I'm just kind of like deer in headlights. I'm like, yes, that sounds good. Do that, please. Whatever you say. But it's
make run game faster.
Yes. That's what it's saying. Operation Make Game Run Faster. Like, they've really sort of simplified the name, where in reality there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Jason, I know you play Planetside 2. What do you think of this? You think it's about time, obviously, but what do you sort of think about the documentation of this, how they're approaching this sort of touchy subject?
I am sick and disgusted, not by the approach of them, but by reading about what kind of frame rate you get when you play.
Oh, really? You didn't like that?
I wish I could sniff 45 frames per second.
What do you average?
If I'm lucky, when there's nothing going on around, I can maybe pull 30. But anyway,
settings?
Like high, like reasonable, not like ultra or anything like that, but stuff so that it looks pretty nice. Not,
I think it's kind of funny that you have to run it higher to get better frame rates, because if you run it lower, it just offloads it to the CPU, and because of its bottleneck, the game's bottleneck CPU wise, you get actually worse performance in that respect.
Yeah, and this brings me back to thinking about how my graphics cards won't work on my computer. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you got to think there are some people out there who are not us, who are all those people who are on Reddit or whatever, who are talking about this sort of thing. Oh, it doesn't use enough cores. It doesn't use dual processing, whatchamafriggin' call it or whatever. And they're watching this now and going, well, okay, maybe they do kind of maybe know what they're talking about, at least in theory, even if they're not necessarily implementing it properly at the time. It just like everyone's an expert when something's not working right. They all know exactly what needs to be fixed. So at least now I think they're kind of trying to come back at people like that a little bit. Like say, okay, we are reprocessing the dual and
what's one of the best ways to argue a point? Lay out facts.
yeah, that's a good thing to do.
That's kind of like important to do whenever you're trying to argue a point is have facts. So
it's a nice idea.
By them laying it out in such a non-filtered technical jargon forum, it really sort of like differentiates the chatter on the forums from just people who don't know what they're talking about, and then the actual professionals who are like, yes, we want to do this, but this is what we're currently facing. Like I watched the video today, the second video, where he was specifically talking about input lag and lag spikes in dealing with the interface and what's happening when you're trying to click something or react. And he was dealing with microsecond lag spikes. And he was saying that each element in the UI, and he had this like measurement bar going that was like measuring each element of the UI and how it was actually acting in like performance-wise. And then he talked about how he optimized like the health bar area to make that use less, microns of milliseconds. And I'm like, holy crap, these all look very minute, but on the large scale, they add up. And there just seems to be so many moving parts, just even in the UI area. So each of this that they're trying to tackle and sort of get through and move past is a very detailed and time-consuming process. I think in the second video, they mentioned they're about 30% done. Or a third of the way, they said it specifically with where they want to be with all of this, which I'm surprised. A third, we don't know how long they've been doing this, but a third of the way seems more than I expected. I didn't expect them to have something overnight, but I expected this to be sort of like it's taken them this long to get to this point. I figured there was something, slowing them down.
The theory that I came up with just a few days ago is that EverQuest Next Landmark is actually really the beta for EverQuest Next. And I sort of based that off looking how the issues they've had with Planetside 2 and performance with the ForgeLight engine, thinking that they want to do Landmark to try and optimize that so that when they do EverQuest Next for real, it'll work better than, say, Planetside 2 did at launch.
Oh, yeah, but I definitely think Landmark will be in a better spot than Planetside 2 was at launch. Like, I definitely think it's an iterative process. So what we see in Landmark will be better than Planetside 2, and then what we see in EverQuest Next will be better than what we see in Landmark.
Sure.
It just kind of they just kind of learn from their mistakes and keep going forward and forward and forward. So I have big props to SOE that they're adding this. A big part of this is probably because they want to get Planetside 2 to work smoothly on PlayStation 4 technology, since it is going to be played at Ultra. They promise it at Ultra on the PlayStation 4. And hey, PlayStation 4 happens to use AMD technology. So it's kind of important that it's optimized for that, I would suppose.
Does that mean that it's going to work better on AMDs than it will on Intel's after this?
I think it would work on the same plane, because right now apparently they're not even.
Well, yeah, so why would they continue I'm figuring they're going to probably continue the trade of making it not even. But getting back to it, I'm wondering why they didn't start this earlier, because there was that long period of time in which they weren't doing anything. So it makes me feel like they don't really care about the PC version. They're just really just trying to tackle the stuff for the PS4. Otherwise, I think they would have started this.
I think they just thought this would be a good time to kill two birds with one stone. They have to already get it optimized for the PlayStation 4, so why not optimize everything else at the same time?
Well, then that brings up like they didn't have a choice. They just decided, we're going to have to do this. Let's just, do both. Because not that they actually wanted to. I don't know. I'm not entirely thrilled. I'm happy it's being done. I'm not feeling like their reasons for it are all that awesome.
I think it just comes down to priority. Before, their priority was to get out more content, and they honestly weren't paying too much stock or attention, putting too much stock or attention into the optimization as much as they could. But now it's sort of reached a boiling point where it's very much necessary for them to succeed on the PlayStation 4, obviously. But also it's at that point where I think they felt like they need to address it, that they have sort of like an idea of where they're going to be heading content-wise, and so they just want to get, before they release a new continent with a bunch of lush jungle environments and a ton of more stuff to optimize on the screen, they probably want to get the baseline optimization going before they add in the new continents and the new cross, between continent areas, because those are actually the newest additions in terms of physical locations and changes in locations that are scheduled up next. Amarish, the last continent to be added, was added months ago during the beta. So not even we haven't had any real update in terms of content additions in quite some time. So it would kind of make sense that they would do that before finalizing all their changes and updates and adding in Tossin. That's the latest planet. So SOE, I'm going to go ahead and say, better late than never. I'm glad that you're showing it to the public, at least for the fact that it'll shut them up now and get them to realize, yes, something's being done. We're sorry it's taken so long, but there is physical proof it's being done. And if your computer still has issues afterwards, maybe you should not try to play a 2,000 person FPS on a potato.
Are you saying you don't want me to play?
Do you have a potato at home?
Pretty much.
How is that potato being powered? Is there a dribble next to it?
It's one of those potato clocks. You can make potato.
So self-powered.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's pretty energy efficient then.
It is like 300 potatoes though. It's pretty tough.
Oh man, so
I got to keep replacing them every few weeks.
That's a lot of potatoes.
You need that much power. I mean, the video card requires that much on itself.
Yeah. You have just your garage filled with potatoes and all these wires coming out to that's powering my PC.
Yep.
All right, so now going a little bit further, we're going to talk about a separate SOE article or topic of discussion. This dealing with SOE announcing 2 big updates for EverQuest, not next, EverQuest 2. So of course, EverQuest 2 is somewhat of one of their staple MMOs that they've had for many years. The sequel to original EverQuest, and for the longest time, it was pretty restrictive for free-to-play players. And they couldn't access a lot of their bank or their mail or gold caps. And slowly but surely, SOE over the last year or so has been peeling back some of those restrictions. And most recently, they're going to be peeling back on October 1st. They're going to be peeling back the restriction on equipment for both silver and free accounts. So that means that you will no longer be restricted to use gear below the legendary and I believe the mythical. It's mythical, I believe. They have a one above legendary, which is what was weird. I wasn't actually so sure of the name of that. But you can use everything now, all the different item types, and not have to worry about having to pay to unlock that or just getting restricted to just blue items or what have you, which pretty much meant in the past that you could not participate in in-game content. Even if you purchased an expansion, which they still have implemented, you still have to purchase the latest expansion, you would not be able to use the items from that expansion before because they would have been of a certain rarity. But now you're able to. So Fabled and Legendary, those are the 2 types of equipment they've unlocked now and sort of let everybody use and not have to actually pay for that. They're also doing something that's pretty cool. It's sort of like the Terra Online recent event where they had a quick level up for everybody. The only difference is this is a little bit more restricted. It's more dealing with what's called the Heroes Call event, where players get a chance to create 1 new heroic character per household for free. So the heroic character starts out at level 85, has 280 alternate advancement points to test out the class, and they're able to use that and just progress solely on that character without the need to level up to 85. Once that event ends, which is on the 15th, you can then try the heroic classes on your own for a certain amount of time until level 86. So you can go from 85 to 86, but then you'll have to actually purchase them after that point. So I'm curious, Jason, Kevin, would any of these incentives actually want you to try out EverQuest 2? I mean, it's been around for a long time. It's had many expansions. They always add new content for it, and there is a healthy player base. But are these, is this enough to incentivize you to pay for an expansion, a $39.99 expansion, because that is currently the price to pay for the latest expansion? in order for you to participate in EverQuest?
No, because the game's been out for a while, and even with the updates and stuff, I'm not going to spend $40 for it. I mean, that's what I'm looking to have to do, just to play the expansion's latest in-game, when there's so many others that have better graphics that I can still play for free, and like with the whole Terra thing, that excited me because I can get in-game without having to pay anything. I get that if you're a fan of it, this gives you a chance to get like a really awesome character, and you might be inclined to do the 40, but that's a huge amount just to try to play in-game, and it just doesn't appeal to me. I mean, I do like that they've removed the item restrictions as well. That means if you've already been doing it, you're going to have an improved experience, but I don't think it's enough to draw new people in, personally.
Yeah, I think the only way it draws in new people is if you already have someone who's playing it, a friend, and that person's near max level. And if you got into it, you'd have to be level 1. You have to spend months or whatever playing and to get up there. Whereas this will let you just get up and start playing with your friend more or less right away. I'm the same way as Kevin. I tried it when it went free to play a couple of years ago. Got to like level 10 and was just like, yeah, this is just not exciting. It's the same kind of game. There's 50 of these out there, so I'm just not going to bother. And I'm sure not going to bother if it's going to cost me $40 to do it, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I'm really sort of baffled about is that they're charging so much for these expansions, and I get the fact that they put a lot of time into these. These aren't just like typical little updates, these are full-blown expansions. But I mean, come on, we're dealing with a game that has been out for numerous years. You already have a very big free-to-play component to it. You need to give that access to the extra content, because $40, that puts you right up there with retail game costs. At that point, you're not playing a free-to-play game. It's not elective at that point, and especially if you consider you're going to make your level 85 character. That means you can play for, I think, 5 levels maybe before
I think it's 10. I think 95 is.
Yeah, I know, but you have to, in order to get to 95, you have to pay for the expansion.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So I think you can only go from 85 to 90.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe, I think maybe 85 to 90 before you actually have to pay in order to access that new content. So in that respect, you are fairly restricted even at the get-go. Even if you opt to do this quick level experience, you're only going to get 5 levels before you hit some kind of wall. And so, I mean, it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, lays eggs.
Must be an alligator. Nope.
Must be an alligator. So, in this respect, I really, especially in the past, they could get away with it. There was less expansions. We had this discussion last week. But even now, with all these new sort of restrictions lifted, you're still looking at paying $40. $40 to enjoy the latest content, where arguably 90% of the player base is going to be.
Yeah, but at least with at least with something like Terra, you had to actually see what endgame was like. You'd be level 50, 80. You could probably do a little level 60 stuff, or you could level up there quickly enough and find out, because that's the idea. The idea is so that you can get up there and not have to do a level grind and kill 10 rats for another bunch of levels before you can do something fun. Whereas in EverQuest, it sounds like you get to be 85. Now you get to go kill 10 rats for a few levels, and then you'll have to pay.
Yeah, right.
Without ever actually seeing the real endgame content. It's like, what? Huh?
It's like it just gets you quicker up there so you can start paying quicker.
I guess, yeah.
It's the feeling that it gives. It may not be what they're trying to do, but it is the feeling. And I just don't want to see... I don't want it to have to take another 3 years for Sony to be like, okay, we're finally making it to where the expansions are free now. Like, I don't want to be... I don't feel like that would be newsworthy 3 years from now.
I'll be honest, all this really makes me want is for EverQuest Next to finally come out already.
Yeah, so what happens? That's another question to ask. What happens to EverQuest 2 or EverQuest 1 when EverQuest Next comes out? At what point are those devalued enough to where Sony can stop clinching that sort of nickel and dime death grip that it has on players in these games, and letting a little bit other players come out? Because I'm sure there are players who like hardcore MMOs who have always heard about how EverQuest was such an amazing experience and stuff like that, and would want to try it, kind of like how people would want to try like original WoW or something like that. But as it stands, I just can't recommend, paying $40 just to see if you like the in-game content. It's kind of just how it is. But that's sort of like the news. It's kind of like been a Sony news week. They've had several little news updates and what have you. By the way, if you're so interested, you can pay for individual parts of the 8th expansion, Age of Discovery, which basically means that you can unlock like the class without having to pay for all the other unique little features that came with the expansion, which is somewhat interesting. I would think that would be a pretty cool addition to a pay-to-play MMO. But in a free-to-play one, come on, now you're nickeling and diming us on old features from the previous expansion. Why not just give them to us for free? That expansion came out in 2011. That's 2 years. I think that's enough time to make your money back and maybe start giving some of that out for free. Maybe. I don't know. I feel, Jason, you might have to hold me back tonight. I feel like I'm in like a rantastic mood.
I'm not in the same building as you. Kevin's going to have to be the one who holds you back.
Kevin's not even in the same room. Kevin,
he's closer than I am.
If it's deserving of a rant. I'm sorry. I have a hard time like letting people get away with crap, so I'm actually backing you up on this one.
Oh, I just feel like sometimes I get so winded, and then you guys, like, you're just like sitting there quietly, and I'm like, okay.
We're waiting our turn. Politely waiting our turn.
All right. So, speaking of rants, who here saw my RidgeRacer Driftopia first look video?
I did.
Jason, did you get a chance to check out any of that?
I didn't. I'm sorry. I'm a bad person.
Jason, come on.
I know.
It's like...
It was 23 minutes. I don't have that kind of time.
If you just do what everybody else does on YouTube and skip around for like 4 minutes, you'll get the gist of it.
I figured you would just tell me how awful it was based on your write-up.
Oh, gosh. How to describe. So, RidgeRacer, for those of you who don't know, was a popular arcade game from the early 90s. It's had many sequels, and in general it stayed somewhat true to the original series throughout the years. A couple years ago, I think in 2012, Namco, who is the owner of the franchise, decided to enlist a company called Bugbear to create a new vision of RidgeRacer, which essentially changed the game from a slightly more realistic arcade racer to a very... What's the word for this? Adrenaline-filled, octane-filled, like... It's like Need for Speed meets Rush 2044, if you remember that arcade game, meets Burnout, meets like Flat Out, which makes sense because Bugbear, I almost said Big Bug, Bugbear there, they actually made Flat Out, so there's sort of a similarity there. But the game itself does not really at all mirror how it used to be. So some fans are upset about that, and that kind of gets into the whole sequelitis thing I was talking about. How companies seem to really want to take franchises that are well known and then completely change it and market it as free to play, like the Legacy of Kain, and in this case RidgeRacer, and then we've even seen it through things like Ubisoft, and any of their Ghost series, Ghost Recon series rather. You have Ghost Recon Online, and then Anno Online, and then all those sort of Uplay games that they've made free to play. And it kind of just gets my jimmies rustled, Jason and Kevin. That's what it does. I
don't even know what that means.
My jimmies.
I don't want to rustle your jimmies.
No, you do not, Jason.
No.
You do not want to see Spunkify with his jimmies rustled.
Oh. I don't want to see Spunkify's jimmies in any sort of way, rustled or unrustled.
That's good of you. You're smart, Kevin. You think ahead. So essentially... What's so wrong with RidgeRacer in the first look? What I had such a problem with it was that it not only did it not follow anything similar to the original series, which is a whole different point. Series go in different directions all the time, but it was the fact that it wasn't even close to what the game it was inspired by. It was Unbound was the original new envisionment of RidgeRacer, and then Namco had Bugbear take Unbounded and make Driftopia out of it. So it's somewhat similar. They have sort of the same UI. The gameplay is similar, but the game is like a completely different experience. They've stripped out a lot of different multiplayer features from the original Unbounded. The car physics are all over the place. They're a lot more floaty and less sort of heavy and weighted as it was in Unbounded, where cars felt like they had weight. If you watch the first look, I go flying through the air like I folded myself into a paper plane and threw myself, essentially. Like, I'll get nudged, and fly out and hit something and explode with the littlest of effort. And when you explode in the game, you have to restart the race completely from scratch, and you have to pay your repair costs. And the repair cost adds up as you keep upgrading your car.
I already don't like this.
Yeah, right?
Just from hearing that much.
You see how this keeps
Wow.
adding to itself? It just keeps compounding.
That's like, what was that one MMO that was like had a death penalty? Like if you die, you have to pay to res. Wasn't Allods like that originally?
You know, I actually didn't play Allods when it was originally came out.
Oh god, nobody did. Well, nobody who wanted to. Nobody smart did. But yeah, that's what I thought they had too. Where it's like if you died, you have to. You spend you could wait like half an hour to revive, or you could pay money to come back or something like that.
They force you to. If you do not pay to repair your car, it's not like, okay, you know how like World of Tanks, when your tank gets blown up, you can't use it? Like, you have to repair it, right?
Sure.
But it's still there. You still have the tank. In RidgeRacer, you don't have the car if you choose not to repair it. It goes away. It's like permadeath to that car.
Oh my gosh.
And that car you upgrade. And so if you do not have enough to upgrade that car, you will lose that car. And you will get a crappy car, and you will have to start all over again to get a new car. And it's not like you unlock a car and then you get to keep a version of that car no matter what. You will have to then either pay for a new pack, because the cars come in like packs of cards almost, where you get like a couple rare, maybe some uncommon ones, some common ones, and you use that as a pool to race with. And if you run out, you just get this generic car, and you have to sort of earn these cars. And I feel like it was just such a wasted opportunity, because we haven't had a good arcade racer, like a really serious arcade racer, in a while. And in the racing genre as a whole, I feel has been very neglected. Accessible racing games, for free-to-play especially, have been severely neglected. Some that are just fun that you can just hop into, have a couple quick matches, do some cool burnouts or, power slides. And they had elements in RidgeRacer like that were really sort of rewarding those in that sense. But then you just had all this other clutter on top of it, and these inconsistencies in physics, and it was like a train wreck. I couldn't believe this has been something that was like, Namco's a very well-known brand, and I felt embarrassed by what they were presenting. I did not. It was like they did not pay attention to how free-to-play normally behaves now, because at every turn you could pay for something. You were restricted to just 2 car slots. You can only have 2 car slots active at any time, and if you wanted to switch out one of those car slots with a different car, you would lose all of your current progress on that car. So if you were like halfway to leveling up that car and you wanted to switch it out because a different car you wanted to try, all that progress, however long it took you, you would wipe out for that, and you would have to start over if you wanted to use that car again.
That's not being a bad free-to-play game. That's just being a bad game.
That's just, I know. Those are like, I didn't understand what happened, because Unbounded did not have these things. Obviously, Unbounded wasn't a free-to-play game, but they took Unbounded, it seemed, and just tried to shoehorn these free-to-play elements in there, and what came out was this thing that was like, I'm free-to-play, right? But it had like all these elements just sticking out of it, like it was like some horrible mutated mess that had gone wrong. And they're like, oh God, no, and like, kill me, please, like that kind of thing.
I'm just imagining this free-to-play game coming out of the lab, like out of a vat or something.
Yeah.
Being this mutant, kill me, please.
Yeah, I mean, like,
the pain.
Where in the recipe did we go wrong in this, Kevin? I'm curious. You watched the free-to-play, like what? You watched the first look of it. What did you think? Are my assumptions correct? Do you feel like I'm being a little bit too harsh on it?
If anything, you're on the being slightly generous about it. There's so much about it. Watching it, it tries to hinge on being realistic and at the same time unrealistic. Like, I don't understand how you can hit a parked car or hit an ongoing car and just blow it out of the water and do no damage to yourself, but someone nicks you and you just disintegrate instantly. Like, this game lets you drive through walls, but doesn't let you hit another car without blowing up.
You cannot hit a wall either. If you hit a stationary wall, like a pillar, that is not meant to blow up, you will blow up.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And yeah, it's nickel and diming you in the most oppressive, unfun way possible. There's times when, it's okay to make people pay to unlock extra things, but the limits are so ridiculous. It's like they basically say, hey, you only get to play one car, and then maybe try out another car one at a time. That way you have your 2 slots. But if you made a mistake and switched away from something, too bad. You got to re-earn it. And I think it's going to lose a lot of people in a hurry. I'm not sure how it's going to keep people in this game unless they fix it like now.
The only way you can earn a brand new car without paying for it, as I could see, what I could see was that you have to challenge one of the cars that you knock out of a race. You have to challenge it when you level up. And if you win the race against the car that you knocked out, you get that car. So that's how you earn new cars, which is sort of interesting until you realize that it takes a while to like level up. And that you only get one chance to race the car. So I had one chance to race a car, which I thought was cool. It was an uncommon car. It was different than all the other cars I knocked out of the race. It was the only car that was unique out of all the ones I had knocked out. I had all the other ones. And the car smoked me. Like it was nothing. Like, he was 6 seconds ahead and I blinked, That kind of thing. So in that respect, like it makes it so you have to pay in order to get extra cars if you want to really experience anything other than a snail's pace without the risk of potentially losing a car. Like I had dry spells where I went 5 restarts crashing before I was able to effectively get a good run where I didn't accidentally hit something. I actually had a run where I was doing amazing. I was going like 200 miles an hour. I was hitting all the turns. And I went so fast, my car like lifted off the ground and started flipping in the air. Like, it literally lifted itself off the ground because I was, like, hovering above the ground as I was flying over these small corners and ended up just completely disintegrating. I didn't have to touch anything. It just that the physics decided that you have been on the ground long enough. It is time for you to go airborne. I mean, come on. I cannot...
Yeah, that's just poor game design.
So, would you recommend this game?
I
can't tell. I can't really tell what your opinion is.
I can't. And the biggest thing to me is that it just feels like a very lame excuse to make a free-to-play game off of a series that people will see,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the fact that it's just bad. It's a fact that it was played off as something that's like has this origin with the series. Is made by a company that made Unbounded, which was good. And then it's just clearly lacking in the same sort of like dedication and actual thought process necessary to create a game that functions correctly in a free-to-play space. So if you guys want to see me rant and actually see about what I'm talking about in person, I highly suggest you check out the first look and tell me what you think. If I'm being a little bit overcritical, I don't want to be overly critical if there's no reason to be, but I really did feel as though RidgeRacer deserved to be called out in this respect because it's a step back when big developers do things like this in the free-to-play space because we just spent a couple years getting to the point where we could have a legitimate discussion about the validity of free-to-play in competition against buy-to-play and not having to pay all this money to unlock certain things or feel like you're pressured into. So, shame on you, Namco Bugbear. Hopefully these things to get changed in the future because, I mean, I used to play those arcade racing games all the time. Who didn't? Who didn't love to play against their friends in the arcades? And I would have loved to have that experience again, but I would love to actually be able to play, first of all, with other people online and not just race against their quote-unquote ghosts. All right, so I'm going to take a deep breath now. I'm going to go ahead and make sure to take some... what was it? Blood pressure medicine after this, and I should be good for the next episode. We should have no issue. It was good. All right, so let's go ahead then and move on to the weekly bombs. And I'm going to go ahead and give my first little weekly bomb here. I'm going to go ahead and give a bomb to Valve. Valve, of course, they always are doing something right. In this week, I'm giving a bomb to Valve because they actually had something sort of noteworthy. They unveiled 3 new updates. It wasn't Half-Life 3. It was Half-Life 4. No. Oh, no, but Valve released, apparently they really like Linux, and so they made a Steam OS that you can download for free, or will be able to. It is Linux-based, and it is meant for big screen TVs, but you'll be able to play your entire collection as far as those that are available to play on Linux. For those that aren't available to play on Linux, you can stream those games from your I guess, your base or home PC where they're actually installed. You can stream them to whatever you're using as the base for the Steam OS and play it that way. It also is the Steam Box they unveiled. Well, they call it the Steam Machine, but everybody just calls it Steam Box.
Because Steam Box sounds dirty.
It sounds better than Steam Machine, I'll tell you that.
Hey, they both still sound better than Xbox One.
Oh, God, yeah. Xbox One just sounds like a marketing term no matter what. Like, it doesn't sound like anything else than a marketing
Xbox number one.
Number one! Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, they should have a giant foam finger whenever they talk about the Xbox One.
Oh, they do. It just isn't the first finger that's out.
Oh, man. And then the Steam controller. Now, I think the Steam controller is one of the most interesting things that they did because it's essentially like a normal controller, except it doesn't have sticks. It's all trackpad stuff. Like, or motion pad, or I don't know what you want to call it. It has ridges. But that's sort of interesting because you get a little bit more feedback and you get a little bit more control. Especially you're going to need that kind of control if you're playing PC games that aren't shooters or any kind of adventure game. But the controller looked pretty futuristic. I'd argue more futuristic than either of the new consoles, PS4 or Xbox One. So I'm just going to give a debon to that because I thought that was pretty awesome. I thought it was exactly what the industry needed, something that was modular, that you could change parts out on, that was still a sort of bridge between the console world and the PC world. Because obviously I think if PC gamers, they're not going to buy a Steam box if they already have a really nice computer. But it can bridge a gap for people who want to play computer games but don't want to have to like go out and choose from all these different manufacturers, what computer would quote-unquote be able to play their games when they can have a bona fide sort of pre-built structure that would allow them to do so, both through the games that they can play natively and then those that they can just stream from their computer. So definitely what the industry needs, in my opinion, not the Ouya. It's like Kool-Aid. That just reminds me of Kool-Aid. Ouya, like that. I don't know. Jason, why don't you go ahead and give us our bomb for this week?
I have an A-bomb, not for the Hearthstone wipe, which is coming out, but for the Hearthstone wine.
Really?
Because people are complaining, first of all, about the wipe, about, oh gosh, now all the cards I bought, they're going to go away. Yeah, they are. You're going to get your money back. You're probably going to get cards you like even better. But of course, people hate, change. They fear losing anything they have, even if they're going to get the same thing back. But that's not even the point. The point that came up again when there was the announcement of the wipe, I saw on forums and whatever, people just complaining about, why didn't I get a key? I've been playing World of Warcraft for so long, they didn't give out enough keys and whatever. It's like, okay, guys, first of all, you don't know how many keys they gave out. They gave out enough for what they wanted, so it's not like they personally hate you for you not getting a key. And it's not like...
No, they do hate them. They hate them personally. They're like Santa. They have a naughty and nice list. And they're like, oh, no, Jimmy was being mad or being bad. He's on the naughty list.
Yeah, but the biggest point is I can't understand on some level why people really, 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 really are hyper crazy about getting into the beta for a free-to-play game. Because unless you're really a good guy and you really want to test it and make sure it works well, aren't you really just wanting to get in a beta for a game because you want to try it out? Because you want to play it, you want to see what it's like? Exactly. For free? Well, for a pay-to-play game, sure, I get that. But you know what? You can do that exact same thing in a couple months when the game comes out for real. You'll be able to play it free and try it out. You don't like it, you move on. It's no different. Well, but apparently, I guess Hearthstone beta invites are going for like $500 in some places.
What?
It's like,
I think it's all about the bragging rights of like, I was the first one to play it. We live in that kind of like hipster world where everyone has to be the first and like, oh, I did it before it was cool.
We also
mounted.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also live in the mountain. We also live in a generation where it's like super entitlement and instant gratification. So people want it now, and they want it all, and they want it fast. So when people don't get into things...
It's up to old farts like me to keep them in line.
Exactly. Like there was a point in time when there wasn't fast food. There is a point in time where you're not going to get in all the betas. Like, it's just going to happen. Not everybody gets in a beta. I know you're so used to betas just being like a promotional period, but in this case, it was fairly limited. I was happy enough to be able to even get one beta key and try and play it out. And I'm not really mad at all, of course, about the wipes because it was to be expected. There's always supposed to be a It's like these people have never played a beta before. Like, I don't know. It's a little bit strange. But Kevin...
Just I just wanted to say, speaking of food, I remember when my family got a microwave.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
My father remembers when his family got a microwave.
Shut up.
Oh, there. That's a good sort of like. All right. That gives everybody an idea. You were born before microwaves existed in the home. No, literally like microwaves, like actual microwaves.
Now I have to look up in Wikipedia and see when the first microwave was invented.
I think it was invented way before.
Probably before I was born, I'm sure,
yes.
but yes.
Do you know the story of how microwaves came about?
Are we really going to go into this?
No, I'll just say really quickly, microwaves came about because someone who was working on something dealing with microwaves had a piece of chocolate in his pocket, and he noticed that after he stepped out from in front of the microwaves, his chocolate was melted, and he was like, I should look into this. And a few years later, he invented the microwave.
Wikipedia says it was a Mr. Goodbar, in fact.
Mr. Goodbar. Look at his name. It sounds like a chocolate name just there. Mr. Goodbar.
No, not the
that
person.
Is the name
not the
of
person. The candy bar.
Oh,
Mr.
it was a Mr. Goodbar. I was like, that sounds like a chocolate. And
The guy's name was Percy Spencer, it says.
Percy Spencer. Well, thank you, Percy, for allowing us to cook our meats very quickly. And other stuff.
Anyway.
Kevin.
My bomb is actually to en masse for that level up event. I've been able to play some Terra now since then, and I must say it actually made the experience enjoyable. I can still do some grindy stuff if I want to, but I must say the quests and everything have actually changed, like in these higher levels, than than what they were like when I was lower level. And I already have access to some of the dungeons and stuff like that, and it really actually makes the game a lot better. And all the stuff they gave you too is pretty awesome. They give you enough gold that you can pay for all your skills. They give you extra gold to then buy the glyphs and things you need. The armor and weapons they give you look awesome and are pretty decent quality. I mean, it didn't take me that long to find some better stuff, but for the fact that they did this all for free and I don't have to pay a single dime, I'm actually really happy with it, and it's going to keep me playing.
Well, there you go. They did something right. I'm glad to see that their plan. They actually said they got like 5 times the amount of what they expected.
Yeah, it was taking them longer to run the script, apparently.
It took them a whole week, apparently, to run the script.
When did you get into the game, Kevin?
I got mine. I think mine finished leveling up like 2 days after they started the script.
Okay.
Not even. I think it was fully done within like the first. It was over 24 hours, but less than 48.
Okay.
Pretty quick there. Pretty quick. All right.
And I'm just going to point out the first commercially available microwave came out in 1947. It was 1.8 meters tall, weighed 340 kilograms, and cost US $5,000.
Wow, that was expensive back then.
Yes.
That was very expensive for 1940.
51,000 in today's dollars.
I'm pretty sure that gave people cancer that stood in front of that.
Probably.
Probably. All right, so member bombs here. Now, we have a few member bombs. First, starting off with just Crooked. Hey, it's not X Crooked X. He sort of cleared that up for us. He said, I have an A-bomb for Square Enix because of Nosgoth. It feels incredibly disrespectful to the Legacy of Kain series. While every Legacy of Kain fan, wanted more loving for the series, no one wanted it evolved into a multiplayer-only free-to-play shooter. The Legacy of Kain series is built on a story-driven single-player experience. With incredible voice acting, Soul Reaver is still easily one of the best voice-acted games over 15 years later. Deep plot lines, incredible mythos, and easily some of the most iconic characters in gaming's history. To be fair, Nosgoth doesn't look like a bad game as far as a multiplayer shooter goes, and it does seem like Psyonix is truly trying to make it a good multiplayer game. However, it feels like nothing is sacred to Square Enix, and this game feels as hurtful to LOK fans as Final Fantasy All the Bravest did to FF fans.
Ooh, that's a
pretty big
comparison.
blow.
That's wow. Well, if it's in the monetization, if it's like All the Bravest, then yeah, that's like RidgeRacer territory there.
Yeah, that's like Final Fantasy Spirits Within, where everybody went and been like, wait a minute, this isn't Final Fantasy.
It had a guy named Sid.
Name.
It had a guy named Sid. That's all I needed.
That's all I needed? That's like the only crossover.
That's all I need for Final Fantasy, yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more, Crooked. I highly agree that when a series is devoted to primarily just single-player experiences, Going a completely different direction is fine, or going in a different direction is fine so long as it stays true to source material and the overall feeling of how the game is supposed to be played. Going in a completely multiplayer direction with no single player component, I do feel for you guys who are fans of that series. Alright, so hopefully one day maybe there is a true sequel. Going up next, why don't we have Kevin? Why don't you take the secondary of the bomb for our members?
Well, from the very, very reliable Air Splash, he's got a very solid bomb for Wildstar. The more information that is released about the game, the more I want to play it. Between now and the time it comes out next year, I hope to keep hearing more information about it that keeps me wanting to play it. From its extensive races and ability mechanics. Oh, he just kind of left that. Anyway, let's hope the class system is just as nice. I was like, oh, I was expecting that sentence to be longer. I also got a tiny bomb for League of Legends World Series. My friends and I have been enjoying it more than Sunday Night Football. Don't know what it says about us, though. You're
the right kind of nerd.
Yeah.
You're the right
I think that gives him a little bit of nerd cred right there.
I sometimes check Sunday Night Football scores while we're doing this.
Really?
Just so you know.
Oh, wow.
And Jason just lost his nerd cred.
In fact, right now the Patriots are 30-13 on the Falcons. But anyway.
Oh, last I saw it was 10-10. Wow, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for being so wrapped up in our free-to-play podcast here.
Hey, he checked the scores.
You said you knew it was 10-10.
No, that was before it started, so...
Oh, sure.
Oh, Jason, getting himself a little bit of trouble. Jason, with that in mind, why don't you go ahead then and take this last bomb?
All right, this is from V2099. He says, A-bomb to DDO for reclassing the entire item classing yet again. Which I suppose I wasn't really aware of this, but I guess it means just changing how items work and how they're classified. Which
probably means that there's a lot of new theory crafting that has to be done. It's
a
big pain in the butt.
Yeah. Bomb to DDO for the free +20 lesser reincarnation stick. I love lesser reincarnation sticks.
I love, they always come in handy when you need them. You're like, you know what I need right now? A lesser reincarnation stick.
A +20 lesser reincarnation stick. And finally, he continues, super bomb on all caps to the guy who paid $10,000 to Mighty No. 9 Kickstarter and enjoy your dinner with Keiji Inafune.
I don't even know what Mighty No. 9 is. Do you?
That is a Kickstarter of a Mega Man, like a Mega Man-ish kind of game, made by the guy who made Mega Man.
I have seen that, and let me take that back. I do know what you're talking about. I'm kind of looking forward to that. The guy that made Mega Man, he's going to have like another side-scrolling adventure there with some of the similarities of Mega Man. So yeah, $10,000 apparently.
Apparently that got him dinner with the guy, with Inafune.
I would hope so. I would hope it also led to maybe a movie and, something else of a night, like a dinner. And
what do you think he's going to date him?
It's a date night. They're out
we don't know if it's a guy that paid the money. We know it's a person. So let's, for everyone's sake, let's suppose it's whoever Kenji wants it to be, or KG wants it to be, male or female.
It's obviously someone who views them as an idol. Or as a prominent person who affected at least their childhood, and now they've grown up to be a millionaire, and they remember the game from their childhood, and they want to give back.
It was you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was totally me. I have $10,000 lying around to give to a Kickstarter. Yes, yeah. I wish MMOBomb made that kind of money for me. Oh, that would be so awesome. But MMOBomb, you're still great to me. I still love you very much, and the community as well. I don't need no $10,000. All I need is the loving from you guys.
I'll take 10 grand then.
Yeah, me too.
You can have 11.
Accepting donations, send them to... Oh, crap. Dang it. Backfire.
You'd have to actually give out your info for that.
Yeah, not going to happen.
All right, so this question of the week question of the week from last week, rather, was, is LAN support something you would personally benefit from? And are there any games you played over LAN? So we're doing a little bit of nostalgia there, going a little bit back in time. For me, the game that I played most over LAN was probably like Age of Empires 2 or Neverwinter Nights. For Shasso33, it was LAN support is not something I benefit from since I have the internet connection. I don't play games outside my home, so it doesn't really apply to me. Well, thanks for just ruining my dreams there, Shasso. Here I was saying how great LAN was for me, and then you just crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. Jason, hopefully Kinetic Fetus has something better to say. Why don't you go ahead and say what his bomb was?
Kinetic Fetus says...
Or not the bomb, answer. God.
His answer. Whatever, the thing that's stuff.
Yes.
Okay. He says, I'm fine with LAN, though will undoubtedly suffer from the monopoly effect. Monopoly, destroying friendships since 1935.
I think
I
the
was not
only
born in
game...
1935.
I think the only game that destroys friendships faster than Monopoly is Mario Party.
Yeah, that could be.
No, see, what happens in Monopoly is it's like a slow effect. Like, you're in it for the long con. You're in it to destroy friendships over the course of like 5 hours. So at the end of that 5th hour, you're like, I just spent 5 hours doing something that absolutely made me hate this person sitting next to me. And you just sort of like mold over that fact for the rest of the night, and you'd be like, what am I doing for my life? And then you don't play Monopoly for like 3 years after that.
Modern day geeks lose friendships over Settlers of Catan.
Oh, yeah, yes we do. I will high five to that, no doubt.
Is that why people don't play Settlers with me anymore?
Oh, I don't play a lot of games with you anymore, Kevin. Munchkin.
Hey, your own fault.
No,
Turn people against me. I just turned them back.
I don't even remember who won the game anyways. It doesn't matter. Kevin, take the last bomb. Oh my god. Take the last weekly question. There we go.
Mega17, he says, definitely for land support. He also then went on to... The neglect of offline gaming over the years is quite the tragedy. Glad it hasn't been forgotten. And last week we couldn't quite figure out which side of the fence he was on, so he went to clarify it. He says, I'm not on the fence. As a personal preference, I only ever want buy-to-play barrier on expansion content. If they'd introduce a new expansion, the other expansion should be included with a purchase or be unlocked by the new expansion's purchase. So, yeah.
Yeah, he was clarifying his stance on having to pay for previous content and games that require you to pay for the latest expansion.
He was definitely clear that he's all for land support, and he's like really happy that it's back, which I am too.
I just hope it continues to come back. You know, it can't just be like a band that's 10 years later, they're like, we've reunited, and then they have like one new hit, and then you never hear about it again. Like, it can't be like that for LAN. It has to come back, and then it has to go on tour for at least another 10 years. That's how LAN support has to be. I'm a huge advocate for LAN support. Alrighty, guys. The question of this week, though, is what do you think about developers using recycled series as new platforms for free-to-play? So we have, of course, Ubisoft, even EA with the Command & Conquer series, making the new Generals game. We've had a lot of sort of companies do the Hollywood effect, where they are taking old series and reconditioning it, you know, and creating new free-to-play content out of it. Do you guys like seeing old games revived as free-to-play? You know, maybe you wouldn't previously get a chance to play it, or would you have rather just seen them get their true sort of spiritual successors? As free-to-play players, let us know in the comments what your opinions. You know, there's a pro and a con to this. You know, as a free-to-play, you're more likely to get something that you don't have to pay for, but it may be not exactly what you were hoping for. And in respect, if it was what you're hoping for, you'd have to pay for it. So let us know in the comments below what you think about recycled series, whether they should be headed towards free-to-play or not. I'm going to go ahead then and let you know my Twitter. If you want to tell me personally, you can do that at Spunkify on Twitter. And then, of course, every Wednesday, you can watch me live stream on Bomb Live, where we take a look at random free-to-play games and generally just try to have a good time. That is twitch.tv/MMOBomb, and that is every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Jason Winter, where can everybody follow you?
You can follow me on the Twitter at WinterInformal. I stream sometimes at twitch.tv/JasonWinter, and I also blog occasionally at jasonwinter.wordpress.com.
Do you have to bring in like an extra large potato whenever you stream?
Yeah, pretty much. I need like a whole another 10-pound bag.
You're like, I have to save up a lot of potatoes for this, otherwise I'm not going to make it through.
On the bright side, after my stream, I get French fries.
You get, wouldn't it like turn them more into paste? Wouldn't you get like mashed potatoes by then? Like it just sucks everything out of them and they just become mush.
Well, I use the hot oil as like that's my liquid coolant.
Oh, I see. Hot oil is liquid coolant.
It runs really hot. It makes it better.
I would imagine
this analogy is really starting to fail, in my opinions.
What did you say, Kevin?
I said this analogy is really starting to fail, in my opinion.
When you start looking at it in depth, then it really the cracks in the seam start really being apparent. Kevin, where can people reach you if they want to, I don't know, talk about your lack of last name?
No social K at Twitter on Twitter. No one tries to anymore. I'm kind of over it, but I'll still leave it available for anyone who feels like I'm important enough to actually contact. Not seeming likely these days. Other than that, not anything else. I probably will stream within the next year, but that's about it. Depends on how my upcoming birthday goes.
Oh, subtle hint there.
Yeah, subtle hint. He's already told me what he wanted.
Yep.
It's like, how can you? That's not really subtle at that point, I suppose. That's
Well,
more
subtle
like,
to the listeners and to me. I didn't know.
Oh well, now you guys know. And now you guys can send him little raspberry kisses in the mail or something. Be like, happy
I'll
birthday.
give a shout out to the person who can correctly guess the date, even though I'm not giving them any clue whatsoever.
Yeah, so go ahead and try to guess the date. It's coming up soon. I'll just say that. But that's going to go ahead and end it for our free-to-play podcast this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We had a little bit of some brain farts throughout the episode. But as always, that is just the nature of the free-to-play podcast. And I have been your host. On behalf of everybody here for the cast, we thank you for watching, listening, and doing what else you're doing while you're listening to us. And until next time, we'll see you then. Spunkify out. Later, guys.